Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started on today's webinar. My name is Kathy Hoverman. I'll be moderating the webinar from the ASCE Environmental and Water Resources Institute and the AFS Bioengineering Section's Joint Committee on Fisheries Engineering and Science. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available for future viewing on our YouTube channel. I will provide that channel link in just a few minutes. The series began in 2015 to share information on aquatic organism passage, dam removal, fisheries improvement, and community and stakeholder engagement, and other related topics. Since its inception, we've provided free quarterly webinars, with today being the second webinar of 2023. Couple announcements. Here's where you can find out how to view our previous webinars. We do have 11 of them. In our early days, we were not recording them, so you only get 11 of our most recent ones. If you search for Joint Committee on Fisheries Engineering and Science on YouTube, you'll be able to find those 11 past webinars. Additionally, we are still looking for members to join the Joint Committee. You can be from any sector as long as you have an interest in our mission, and can serve on a variety of subcommittees and work groups to help us function. If you are interested in joining, feel free to contact any of these three people listed on our executive committee, or if you know anyone directly on the committee, reach out to them as well. All right, this is very exciting. At our last webinar, I had announced that the AFS VES Education Committee was developing two products for practitioners, and I'm really happy to announce that now those two resources are available. And the first one being a training portal, and that's meant as kind of a first stop shop. It's especially useful for those who are early in their career and just starting to learn about the different ways to do fish passage, to do dam removal, those sorts of things. It's a great resource of trainings, of links to trainings, of how to get trainings, and some of them directly on there. So definitely check that out. Even if you're a veteran, go ahead and check it out and see if there's something new on there that might help round out your knowledge. The other item is the checklist. There are 15 to 20 checklists on there, I believe. And it's everything from general project management to design, assessment, construction, post-construction. Those are designed to really help ensure a project really just meets all the things it should. So whether you're reviewing a design or developing a scope of work, these checklists can help you out. So both of those are available on the Joint Committee's website, which is shown here on the right side of your screen. All right, we have the rest of 23 planned out. We have innovative fish passage solutions with the DOE, Department of Energy, and Salmon Superhighway. That's a very exciting title. So I can't wait to see what that one's all about. But then we also are planning all the way into 24 as well. We do have all of 2024 planned out, but just providing the first two here: invasive species, environmental and infrastructure history on Lake Champlain, and then a decade of building to take down four Klamath River dams. So these are all four going to be very exciting and interesting topics. So we hope that you will continue to join us for each of these. All right. So today's speaker is Warren Seyler. He's a member of the Spokane Tribe of Indians and a prolific storyteller. He served for 15 years on the Spokane Tribe's Business Council, taking a leadership role in the regional and national efforts of health, education, and welfare of tribal people. One of his long-term efforts was directed toward getting salmon back to the waters above Grand Coulee Dam. For the past 15 years, Warren has traveled the Pacific Northwest region as a liaison of the Spokane Tribe, delivering Spokane Tribe history presentations and giving historic site tours to high school students, university classes, interested parties, and organizations of a variety of disciplines. And lucky for us, he's here to share that information with us today. If you have questions for Warren during his talk, please drop them in the chat, although we won't be answering questions until the very end. And with that, I'd like to hand this off to Warren. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to go straight to my PowerPoint. But I want to thank the folks that invited me and to share with you a little bit about the Spokane Tribe of Indians and the efforts that we are currently underway of doing to get salmon back into our ancient waters, which is the Columbia and the Spokane Rivers. So I'll just go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to preface everything a little bit because it's not all about what we're doing today. In order to understand what we're doing today, we're going to take a little look at what was here in the years past, for our ancestors at least. And so this is the city of Spokane, in which Spokane tribal people had lived for 10, 14, maybe 16,000 years, at least until since the break of the Ice Age. And I think I need to kind of set the tone of how important it is to us that we get the salmon back. It's not just for the people today and those our children and our grandchildren tomorrow, but it's set deep into the land in which the Spokane River flows. A lot of times when I travel around the country, we get into conversations with various people, and it's good to hear them talk about how important their land is to them. When they say it's 4 or 5, and when you go back east, sometimes 6 and 7 generations old, that their farm or their ranch or their business has been in existence. And I try to deepen that conversation to help them understand how important the land is to us. And I begin by saying, for us, it's 700 generations deep. Just a little bit really brief on the tribe. We were a semi-nomadic people, but we were a river people. We're mainly a river people. And our whole societies were very intricate and interwoven into the plants and the animals and the world around us. And I'm going to breeze past this to get to the Spokane and our relationship with the river in which we speak today. So as if you take nothing else away from today, remember that we were a river people. The Plateau people relied on the river and everything that was in it. So much so, 60 to 70% of our diet came from the river. The salmon, the steelhead, the shellfish, the eel, so much was provided by the river. Now, this isn't really a whole lot to do with fish, but I have to kind of put it to hit it home a little bit later, that around the 1750 era, there were actually about 3,000 Spokanes living up and down the Spokane and its tributaries. And if you look a little further down, that's about how many we have today. So what caused this decrease in population was that the diseases that came from Europe over on the ships. And just understand for how we almost went out of existence. It wasn't until 1917 that the first time in over 60 years, more Native Americans were born than had died. And to understand Spokane, you have to also understand our brother and sister tribes. And so when I'm talking about the other tribes that relied on the river for resources, for food and such, this here in the red, that's where the Seyler speaking tribes came into existence. And so those tribes are our brothers and sister tribes. Most of us were river people. And so these are the types of rivers that our ancestors would have relied on. Fast water, fresh, clean, but mostly filled with fish. The Little Spokane, many people don't know this part of the history, but the Little Spokane River, a branch of the main Spokane River, used to be a world-class salmon and steelhead fishery. It would fill this small river. and thousands of people would come to get a share of the fish. And during that time, we would have salmon chiefs, because we understood both in the main stem Columbia, the Spokane River, and the tributaries like the Little Spokane, so many fish had to go past because tribes already understood the science and nature. So we had salmon chiefs that told us when to begin fishing, when to end fishing, and that was all regulated by one person at each fishing site. So a lot of the information that we're going to cover comes down through oral history. Tribes not having a written language, it comes down to the oral history. And so word of mouth is how we gained and we held on to a lot of the information that we understand about fishing, about the river, and everything that came with those. Also, I want to kind of emphasize why tribes, many tribes, and I think probably all tribes, understand that the animals of the world, if they are our brothers and sisters, and we truly believe this. Modern day has kind of removed that a little bit from our understanding, but deep down, I think we still believe this. You know, when we call a brother bear, sister fish, and all the other animals, those truly are our brothers and sisters. And where this comes from, though, I'm going to borrow my grandmother's tribe story. She was a Coeur d'Alene. Well, Lawrence Arepa captured this best, I think, for me. And he's passed away about 2 years ago, but I asked him if I could share his version of why animals are brothers and sisters. And how he explains it, or explained it at that time, is that when Mother Earth came about and Creator reached down to the land and from it brought forth the animals and the plants, as we came forth, he brought the four-legged, those with wings, those that fly, those that are in the ground, those that crawl, that slither, and the two-legged. And at that same period of time, Creator also gave us laws for all of us to live by. But over time, some of those creatures could not live up to Creator's laws. And so they were placed on a lower platform in life until there was one, that if he chose to live by Creator's laws and Creator's guidelines, he could. So at that time, Creator then gave man, the two-legged, a special mind and a special heart. A special mind to think ahead 7 generations, to prepare for those yet unborn, but also a special mind to always remember the past. Remember your ancestors, not just human ancestors, but ancestors of your brothers and sisters, the animals. Then he gave us a special heart to be kind, caring, and sharing, and not just protect the brothers and sisters of your lodge, but protect your brothers and sisters of the land, the forest, the waters, and in the sky. Now, how Spokanes came to our river systems here in the Pacific Northwest, how tribes of this area, and on this map I've picked 3, the Spokane, the Flathead, who are the Pend d'Oreille, the Bitterroot, Salish, and Kootenai, and the Kalispel. Now, the gentleman that shared this story, and he gave me permission to use his story, he was from the Flathead Reservation. And in his story, his name was Tony Inkashola, well-respected elder, historian, sharer of stories and kindness. And his story goes that at one time, we were all one people, the Seyler speakers. And as our tribe grew, then they disbanded down our river systems, beginning from the east, who's the Bitterroot Salish, which he belonged, the Pend d'Oreille, the Kalispel, the Tuila, the Spokane, the Coeur d'Alenes, other tribes up and down the river system became more populated. Then onto the Columbia River came the different tributaries, the Okanagan River, the Methow River, the Chelan River, the Eniak River, the Wenatchee River. and then moving towards the coast. So these are the Salish speakers who were river people. To the south of us were Sahaptins, and to the east of us were the Blackfoot and the Crow and others. But this was our land, the Spokane and Columbia rivers. Now, just to our north and west is another tribe, smaller tribe. They were an offshoot of the Pend d'Oreille people. They're called the Kalispels. Well, the Kalispels have a similar story in their history or in their oral tradition. Well, they came from the east, moving west. When they came to the top of this mountain, they looked down as they were moving, trying to find a new home. As they looked down, they just saw a huge lake, a lake of just blue, a different type of blue, but just blue. So they stayed on this mountaintop for a while, but then later investigated the lake below. But they come to find out it wasn't a lake at all, that it was this Camas, just this whole valley of Camas in the Pend d'Oreille Valley, what is today the Pend d'Oreille Valley. Now, the third story of how we came to the city of Spokane, how Spokane's arrived where we are today along the Spokane River. Well, this story comes from Chief Lot. Chief Lot was a Spokane chief who told his story in 1902. And it was read to the Spokane Historical Society in 1910. And it tells how the Spokane tribe came to live at Spokane Falls. Now, in his telling of the story, it goes like this, and I'll paraphrase it just a bit. But I want to point one thing out to you. If you didn't know it, because you may not understand the history of the Pacific Northwest, there used to be two Great Lakes, a Great Lake Spokane and a Great Lake Missoula. Now, it is my belief, and I may be the only one, but it's my belief because J. Harlan Bretz, who came up with the Missoula flood theory, he was in the city of Spokane around 1910. And by the 1920s, he started introducing his Missoula flood theory. But it's my belief that he heard the Spokane story and then went out finding the evidence to prove it. Now, if you see these lines in this riverbed, formed by wave action, wind action, that's cutting those waves in the side of the bank. Now, evidence of the Great Flood, what J. Harlan Bretz looked at and others can look at today, is this, such as over in Missoula, Montana, these waves of this massive lake carving into the hillsides. Or when that water was rushing to the Columbia, carving out where the salmon are today, were these great chasms or these great waterways that were once filled. And that was as it rushed to the Columbia River and onto the ocean. Now here's great Chief Lot's story, how we arrived in the city of Spokane. And his story, as he told it to the Indian agent, goes something like this. One day, as the tribes lived along the edge of this great lake, and the edge of this great lake was many days' travel east of the city of Spokane. And as the earth began to shake, these mountainous waves formed on this great lake, came crashing down on the tribe's villages. And as they came crashing down, the tribal people went to the highest mountains. Now, on their way to the mountain, this rain of ash began to fall. Volcanoes were going off, covering the land and killing the plants and the animals. After 2 weeks to 20 days, the ash quit falling and the waves, the earth quit shaking. So the tribal people returned to the edge of this great lake. Upon arrival at the Great Lake, they found the water was receding. They followed the receding water until they arrived here at Spokane Falls, one of our great fisheries. This is a photo taken in the late 1800s. And from that time to now, the Spokane, the salmon, and the river live together as one. This is the size of salmon, and sometimes larger, came up by the thousands, tens of thousands, into the inner parts of the inland Northwest, up the Columbia, up the Spokane, up the Little Spokane, the tributaries. And this is what fed the people of this continent, or this part of the continent, for thousands of years. This is the city of Spokane then, this is it today. Although we've been pushed off of this land, we're trying to get the salmon back to just below these same falls. Historically, the salmon could not get past these falls. So, but we truly believe we can get them back the 400 miles from the ocean and they'll return. But when they came for the power of the falls or the falling water to build their electricity and to run their mill, their sawmills, their grist mills and other things. You know, this is why they came. But during that period of time is our spirituality. It existed in the river. Well, next year we are coming up on the 50th anniversary of the World's Fair that occurred along this river. Now, Expo 74, the World's Fair Expo 74 was the first environmentally based World's Fair that existed. And they came here, and I truly believe the city of Spokane was selected because of the beauty in the river. Because sometimes we forget, many people in the city of Spokane forget to acknowledge what is around them. Now, just to capture what Spokane Falls and the fish meant to the tribal people, I'll say just a quote out of this article. And this is one of our chairmen. His family would have been down the lines of chiefs. I remember this river so well as it used to be before the dams. My father and grandfather used to tell me how it was before the white man came. Right below where we were standing, Indians from all over the world would gather every year for the annual salmon fishery. It was beautiful then, with thousands coming for many miles. You could hear the shouting welcomes as they arrived, the dancing, the singing, the trading, the games, and the races, and always the hearty hugs. And the fish, sometimes it seemed they filled the river. This is what the annual salmon fishery was all about. People coming from all over the region to coming to this river, the Spokane and Columbia rivers, up and down it, because that river was so filled with salmon. And that's what we're trying to get back to. But to understand the future, you always have to remember what occurred in the past, just like Creator told us, always remember the past. So when I started going down this road of helping people understand what occurred, and I used to ask, well, what caused the salmon populations to end first? And almost without hesitation, people, 95 to 98% of the people would say dams. Completely not true. Why the salmon populations first started to being eliminated, salmon coming up this size from the ocean after a 2,000 to 4,000 mile journey to return to the Spokane people, what first caused them to disappear was the fish wheels. Tribal people used to be able to claim the river ran black with fish, or they ran red with fish, or was so many that it seemed you could walk across their backs to the other side. That's what our rivers were filled with, just fish, head to tail, side to side. But then our way of life began to go away. Our food source began to be eliminated. And it was the fish wheels, as I stated just a second ago. Beginning in 1866, these huge contraptions turned by the power of the river itself, night and day, 10, 100, thousands of salmon, steelhead, and other fishes were being taken out of the Columbia River far downstream. At one time, there were over 55 canneries located on the lower part of the Columbia River, down towards Portland and Astoria. Salmon that was destined to return to the Spokane to feed tribal people were caught, canned, and sent around the world. So much so, Chief Gary, one of our most infamous chiefs, wrote a letter to the Indian agents begging for him to approach the other tribes, telling them they were fishing too hard, that Spokanes were starving. But it wasn't just the Spokanes. It was the Spokanes, the Coeur d'Alenes, the Kootenai, the Sandpoil, the Nispelums, the Colvilles, the Nez Perce. Tribes were going hungry. A food source that once fed them for thousands of years, was failing to arrive. Then came the dams. The first one was Little Falls. Little Falls, they began putting it up, and as you can see in the background, there was a tribal village, a band called the Little Falls People, watching these dams come up, sealing off the water, controlling the water, and then, like almost overnight, it seemed that they could turn it off and turn it on at will. And this is part of what Spokane people, part of our history. So this is what we're trying to overcome today in getting salmon back. As that river went silent, not just on the Spokane, but elsewhere. The Columbia River once held huge falls where salmon came up and fed many people. It's what attracted the salmon, it's what attracted the people. It was our main fishing sites. But then the Kettle Falls went silent. Farther downstream on the Columbia River, where again, thousands of people would gather every year to get a share of the fish, because of the backwaters of dams, Seyler went silent. Skip through this, I don't get to run out of time. Then we were forced to the reservation. Fishers to farmers is what they tried to make us. Other dams went up. The largest, and this one is actually referred to by the federal government, the Bureau of Reclamation, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Bonneville Power Administration, and others, as the crown jewel. As Grand Coulee Dam went up, it began to flood the land in which they offered to us for a reservation. So this is on the Spokane River, just below Little Falls. This is what it is today. We're trying to get salmon back into these waters. It's a task, but you'll hear in a second how we're going to achieve that. This is called the sandbar. It is now gone. The homes, the orchards, the farmland once was here is bare ground every year. This river fluctuates 90 feet sometimes every year, up to 90 feet for 180 miles. Farther downstream, there were these beautiful river valleys where homes and churches and farmland and orchards existed. In these lands, when I interviewed a Marion Winecoop years back, she shared with me and stated how the people themselves shared and came together, and they were living on this land, forced out from using what was in the river to start growing their own crops. But then that was taken away by Grand Coulee Dam. They came in, they cleared it off. Yes, we do have a beautiful river valley today, but prior it was a beautiful river valley filled with people and homes and crops and other things. This is our story. This is where the Spokane River runs into the Columbia River. Again, homes, small towns, orchards, up and down this 180 miles. Today it's flooded over. Again, fluctuates up to 90 feet every year, but this is some of the things that we have to overcome to get the salmon back. So this is all behind Grand Coulee Dam. And in all fairness, I got to say, Grand Coulee contributes billions every year, though, to the economy and to the hydropower, to industry, the water needed to flush salmon farther downstream to the ocean and help them get them back. Barging relies on the water from behind Coulee Dam. Irrigation, 500 to 650,000 acres are now irrigated in the Columbia Basin, taken from behind Coulee Dam. You can actually see on the upper left of this photo, the water being sent to Bank Lakes for water storage for all those crops. Tourism is 3 to 4 million people to this river. Flood control. So all these benefits do come in because of Grand Coulee. But for us, the salmon and the land and the impacts were still there. That was our contribution. Part of that, what we're trying to get back is the salmon past this dam so they can come back to the Spokane people. Now, we do have a fairly large natural resources, and I've got about 10 minutes, so I'm going to skip through. But these are the people that hold it together for us, hold it together for our water and our streams and our lakes and our forests. But these are the people that do that. We're trying to get our college kids into natural resources. It's a struggle, but we are making some headway. You can see on the upper left side of this photo is a sturgeon. For the first time in over 40 years, we're now able to have a sturgeon fishery, because up until a few years back, there was no sturgeon in the Columbia River less than 50 years old. Now that we've turned the sturgeon fishery around and the new ones, and it's growing, we've cleaned up the Columbia River. And so now we've got the sturgeon figure out where that's benefited. It's benefited the salmon, because now when people were seeing that the benefits of having a sturgeon fishery, it hits them in the pocketbook. Because upriver now, the motel owners, the gas station owners, the convenience stores, the small towns are all benefiting from what is it now back in the river. We believe this will double or triple or maybe quadruple when salmon return. Now our goal, really the basis of today's message, of how to get salmon back into Spokane waters. So it used to be, for about 25 years, this is how our people would receive the salmon. As you can see, these are salmon carcasses. So when hatcheries need to replenish their stock for the hatcheries, they go out, they shock the salmon or the steelhead, and they take these fish and for their replenishing their hatcheries. And so these become surplus, and these are sent to reservations. And so this is how our people now receive salmon, because we don't, other than buying a license and catching one or two salmon far downstream, far away from our homes. This is how the allocation's received. Now, more recently, we've started educational releases, scientific releases, trying to understand. One of the first things we had to do is prove there was habitat above Grand Coulee Dam. And we thought, when we started our three-phase approach, we actually thought it was going to take longer. But what we came to understand is that the federal government already had this research done. And there's more habitat above Grand Coulee Dam than where the salmon are now. So when our elders are watching our kids once again playing in that water, it's amazing to be in this atmosphere, that where they thought salmon would never run again, they're coming back. Yes, we have to trap and haul and move them here, but we're getting that back into our culture. We're educating the region on what occurs when the rivers become healthy again, where the tributaries become healthy again. Because without fish, rivers and tributaries are sick. And so we're trying to heal those by getting the story or the salmon back. Now for a quick fish story. To get the salmon back, we understand that there's quite a feat, a gauntlet, if you will, to get them back. But it's the drive of the people, the Spokane people and the other tribal people and other now growing in the region, many people, of getting those salmon back. Now, the spirit of the river still remains because it was carried by our ancestors. Now I'm going to share a story, a quick offshoot here, why we think they're coming back, why they have to come back. Well, when I was given presentations, this one Spokane girl came up to me and she said, "Thank you." I finally understand that why every time I crossed the bridge at Little Falls, I used to get this odd feeling. Now I understand the history and the river and who our people were. It all comes rushing to me. The emotions, the understanding of why we need those fish back. But we first had to prove, not just to ourselves, but to everybody in the region, and this includes the federal government, that if given the opportunity, they will return. As you know, salmon are come home from where they were born in a 2 to 5 year cycle. Well, for us inland in the Pacific Northwest, closer to Spokane, there's this creek called Shimikan. It's 12 dams away from the ocean. So we had to prove that these fish would go through these 12 dams, most of them through the turbines, and make it to the ocean. And then once they got to the ocean, make another 2,000 to 3,000 mile journey to return home to us. Quite a feat that we had to prove. The first dam is Little Falls, a small dam. This one is the one I showed you earlier, that where they could shut the water completely off upon demand. Then the crown jewel of the federal government, a 500-foot high Grand Coulee Dam. This is one of the main dams we have to get them past. Chief Joseph Dam. Now salmon today can return as far as this dam. This is the last dam where salmon can go and return to the ocean. Their hurdles, or the gauntlet, is of course warm waters. As we all know, fish do not do well in warm waters. The predator fish that have invaded parts of our river system, the walleye, the northern pike. Well, one of the last dams on the river system is the Dalles Dam. As you can see right here on the left side, there's a fish ladder where the fish can come and go to the ocean. Many fish still go through the turbines but those that can find the fish ladder, they go through here. Well, when we turned those fish loose from Shimikan Creek far upstream, we wasn't sure how long it was going to take. We was hoping for a couple to make it to this dam, because we put pit tags in them, and as they would go through this dam, they would be red, and the other dams, that a ping would go off. So we was hoping. Success was actually initially getting fish this far downriver, 12 dams away. And then finally, after I think it was 6 to 8 months, and finally, all of a sudden, ping. Because most people, I think, had forgotten about it, the fish, that we even turned them loose, or didn't believe they could make that gauntlet even this far. And then another, and then another. And so success was had. So ping as it was going off. But then the gauntlet continued. You have to make it past the fishers and the other animals, go out in the ocean, 2,000 to 3,000 miles, make it past the fish trawlers and the whales. And this is a good thing, because more salmon we can put into this river system goes into the ocean to help creatures such as this. Then they make that journey. And then after 2 to 5 years, when we know, then they have to come and make it back home, past all those dams, past 10 dams to get back to Chief Joseph. So a total of 22 dams to make it back as far as they can upstream. Quite a feat, but we believe they could. Part of that, after 2 years, all of a sudden, ping, it was going off. Next dam, ping. Next dam, ping. They were trying to come home. And remember, we only initially put less than 700 fish into the system, 12 dams away, to make this 4,000 mile journey. As they were coming up the river, my supervisor, BJ Kiefer, called the Colville hatchery. Now the Colville sit just below Chief Joseph Dam, the last dam that they can pass on the system, or the last dam they butt their heads up against in the system. And he picks up the phone and calls the manager, the hatchery manager, and says, if by some miracle, if you get our Spokane fish, we'd sure like it back. And so it goes on for 3 weeks. They're shocking fish and getting what they need to replenish their hatchery stock. Phone call comes back to BJ. Sorry, BJ. We're closing our gates. We're going to turn off the water and clean our runways out tomorrow. So BJ, well, thank you. At least we know they'll try to come home. They'll try to get back through the river system. And so he hangs up. The next day, there is another phone call that comes in. That's okay. I got it. So another phone call comes into BJ. Well, when this phone call comes in, he just thought they were going to tell us, well, we got a few extras. Bring one of those blue totes and we'll fill it up, or we'll put some fish into it for you. Well, when the phone call came in, the folks he was talking to at the Colville hatchery, the Chief Joe hatchery, they said, we don't know how, BJ, because we've dropped with the gates are closed. We turned the water off, but somehow when we arrived this morning, there were 10 fish in that raceway. Again, he initially just thought bring a blue tote, but it wasn't. Somehow, divine intervention, maybe, Creator helping us prove our point, that our fish came home. That year there were 3. So we know that if we turn fish loose in the city of Spokane or in Shimmican Creek or in our part of the world, they today will still attempt to make that 2,000 to 4,000 mile journey, 2 to 5 years, and come home to the Spokane people. And that's why we've got we are in a 3-phase approach to get the fish back. We're now in phase 2. We've proven the habitat is here. Now we're proven and running the science and the educational and the cultural releases to get more buy-in from in the region. And I think my time is up. So that's a story of here in the northwest of the Spokane tribe and many of the other tribes around the region. Thank you very much. And I'll turn my share back off.
Well, thank you, Warren. That's very cool. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I do want to invite people to start dropping in their questions into the chat box so we can have a nice discussion with Warren. Warren, one thing that I was thinking of, especially as you kind of rolled it back to your program, is there who are you working with to kind of create the knowledge base inside of your tribal community? Is there a way that either government agencies or organizations could maybe support you in that? Like, are you looking for partnerships and things of that nature that maybe somebody could reach out to you if they've maybe got an opportunity to help train some folks?
Right now, we're doing a fairly large outreach and education of the salmon. One that it is possible to get them back, and so we're also at the same time running the science on it. And I'm not the biologist, so this is all in layman's terms. But part of my job is the outreach, and so there's such a growing desire, almost a demand by so many. How can we help? What can be done? Well, part of the hurdles of the past was the fear of the unknown. So many like many things, how much is this going to cost? And our message is we don't believe we have to take any dams out to get the fish back. We don't, and so that's been our stance, because that's the biggest fear by those that start looking at it from a point of view of money. Taking dams out, what's it's going to cost versus the value. But we believe we can truly get them back into the above Grand Coulee Dam into Spokane waters without taking lower river dams out. That issue is more elevated because of what is happening on the Snake River here in the Pacific Northwest. But we think there are other solutions. we've proven there are other solutions. The habitat is here. And so that coordination with, for us, it's 5 tribes, which are in the blocked area. We call them the Yukut tribes, the Spokane, the Coeur d'Alene, the Kootenai, the Kalispel, and the Colville. And so we are currently working together with the federal agencies, with the state agencies, with a lot of local organizations, the Spokane River Keepers and other entities. And one is just starting down that road of education and hitting those fears or those political challenges head on. Because initially, nobody in the federal government wanted this to happen. They actually fought against it. You know, they made threats to other organizations. If you help the Spokanes, your funding will go away and those types of things. But now so many people, and I mentioned it briefly when I talked about the sturgeon, but now these county commissioners and these small towns who was against it in the beginning understood the economics of it, and not just the health of the river, but the health of their towns.
Yeah. Yeah, education really does go a long way with some of this. All right, so we have a couple of comments and questions rolling in. One of them is about the Southeast Alaska and North Coast and West Coast Vancouver Island that catch summer and fall Chinook originate in Columbia River. Sounds like it's some similar efforts. The PSC is also monitoring the return of sockeye on the Okanagan. Man,
Yeah.
how do I say that? Okanagan. I am so sorry.
Yeah, they are downriver. They're right connected with that Chief Joseph Hatchery, and the Colville tribe is doing some great things on the Columbia and Okanagan River with their hatchery.
Perfect. That's great. Takes all of us to get this going. All right, so here's one question. Has there been any progress in getting passage installed at the last 2 remaining dams?
That's a ways off. You know, in the initial beginning, I think what our biologists and folks are really looking at is just trap and haul, trapping below those dams and getting them up into the where there's major habitat, and that's above Grand Coulee. So trap and haul, I would assume, is probably the initial way to go. But there are seeing some success at some high dams. You know, this I think it's called the whoosh system. It's kind of like a water cannon or whatever have you.
I thought it was an amusement park for fish.
Yeah. But they're on the Klamath. There's some high dams, and I think they're having some success through those, getting them past those dams currently.
Okay, great. So someone pointed out hadn't realized the impact of the fish wheels. I can double down on that statement. I hadn't heard of them before, so that was very interesting. And just this person's also asking if dam managers helped contribute to the recovery approach.
Dam managers, I can't speak for farther downstream. But I know the Chief Joe and the Grand Coulee, there's little to no support. But it's that fear. It's that fear is, what is this going to cost us? Because on the Columbia River system here, you know, in 1980, when they passed the Power Act to mitigate for those damages, now they've capped it. They've capped that at a certain cost, but that Bonneville Power will pay. And so the challenge is to keep convince people that there's added benefits, and through that, then you can put the political pressure on, and then that'll help with the dams. And I'm gonna just slide away because I've got to. Oh, I was gonna slide away. The vacuum was going on. I didn't know if that was interfering or not.
Yeah, you're good. I can't even hear it at all. So, okay, there is somebody who's wondering if the tribe is seeking support from the various infrastructure grants aimed at improving aquatic habitat connectivity. You know, there's a lot of money out there. Are you all seeking any of that?
Yeah, we're getting really good assistance from one from the state of Washington. Governor Inslee has understood. He's been the governor for quite a while, but when he was in Congress, the tribes have done a really good job on educating him on what salmon really mean, not just to the tribes, but to the region in general. And that vacuum's getting really loud. I
Sure,
can't even.
no problem. Go ahead. For everybody tuning along, if you're not following the chat, there's been a couple of links and examples that have been dropped in. So definitely turn on the chat and look at the different examples that people are putting in, including some big whoosh supporters. We've got a couple examples of sockeye reintroduction studied with the use of whoosh, and then putting in a whoosh pass system at Chief Joseph for the 2024 season. So some cool stuff in chat if you all have a chance to look at that. So Warren, did you want to continue on with what you were saying?
So the Washington State Governor Inslee, he is helping a lot to the legislation, but they're finally looking at the benefits, not just at a cost, but the actual benefits that are coming into the region and supporting that. The federal agencies are coming up with some dollars that they too are realizing once we quit, or once we've not brought up the issue of dam removal, they're a little more
Right.
Their ears open up a little better. And in all honesty, now I may be the only one talking like this because it's almost like taboo, but facts are facts, and you speak truth to power, and you'll get farther in the long run, I think. But there's a lot of wonderful things. We have the Spokane tribe and other tribes have some great staff. I would match them up with anyone in the world because they are really good, and they're getting the salmon and the knowledge and the stuff back. The odd thing, and I'll say this, remember those blue totes? Well, 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, when we brought the very first blue tote home filled with about 100 fish, it took us 2 weeks to give them away. Nobody knew how to take care of a 20-pound salmon.
Huh.
And so, but we lost it out of our culture. When you're a river people and you've been pushed off the river so long, you've almost lost that taste. Today you can bring 400 or 500 fish back and they're gone in 20 minutes. Well, we reacquired that taste, but more so it's reacquired because we now understand that was who we are. That was how we lived on for thousands of years, and it's a demand now of culture and getting it back, and just the local people are really pushing hard and understanding what it all means.
Yeah, that's really great. Some folks want to know how they can support you, or anything that you might need.
That question I'll have to add. It would probably be calling our fisheries office, Spokane Tribes Fishery Office, which is in Airway Heights, or the Upper Columbia United Tribes Organization, which is located in the city of Spokane. They pretty much work hand in glove. So if you look up the Upper Columbia United Tribes or UCUT organization phone number, and I don't have it right here, I should have had that stuff available. They'll identify the support and how you can be done. We've been doing fish releases, educational and scientific, and we're getting a lot of people. And just showing the politicians the numbers of people that are supporting salmon returning, that always helps. It's becomes a issues like this become politics. And
Warren, do you mind if I drop your email into the chat so that if folks want to reach out to you on something specific?
And if they have something I can't answer, I'll just forward it to the people that know more than me.
Perfect. Okay, well, we have 5 minutes left, and there it looks like there's maybe two more questions that have come in. Are there any significant contributing efforts to improve water quality, specifically relating to ag and POTW effluent discharge to these rivers? One of the commenters' largest concerns locally are contaminants of emerging concern, hindering salmon migration and survival.
Yeah, up here in the a lot of that is occurring more downstream, where the river is flowing through the orchards. You know, Washington is big on apples and grapes, and you know, so that those contaminants, although there's a few up here, it's nowhere near like it is farther downstream. Up here, maybe like in the Hangman, it's more sediment from farmers' runoff. But we've for the most part taken care of our Superfund sites. You know, coming out of the Silver Valley, the Superfund coming out of Tecaminco, out of Canada. We had one here on the reservation, the Midnight Mine. It was a uranium mine. But we have done major cleanups. When I talk about the one out of Canada, Tecaminco, that's actually why there was no sturgeon less than 50 years old in the Columbia River, because those heavy metal contaminants that Canada was sending down into the system, it was killing the young sturgeon. And so for many miles, there was no sturgeon younger than 50 years because they've all been contaminated, and they were dying off still young. Once we cleaned up areas like Black Sand Beach and had them discontinue the heavy metals into the system, the sturgeon fishery is actually flourishing. So now you have sturgeon of all ages. And so we've done quite a bit to clean up the river. A ways to go, but we've done quite a bit. And that's challenging the city of Spokane and others to put in water treatment systems and that. For our part of the river, we're doing pretty good. Lower down, you do have those other contaminants of from farmers and orchard growers and that type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. We have 3 minutes. There's let's see, one more question, and I think this will be our last one. If you have additional questions, feel free to email Warren on those items. How do you approach managing downstream migration through the reservoirs and across the dams?
That's probably a science, one of our biologists' questions. But you know, when we started that first release of 697 fish, knowing that historically there were millions upon millions of eggs being laid and going to the ocean, it just proved how resilient the salmon are. They'll find a way. Now, going to get those salmon through those dams, we didn't have to do anything. They found their way.
Yeah.
You know, some of those dams have fish ladders, but the two largest don't, Chief Joe and Grand Coulee. And so they had to go through the turbines, but they survived and did come home. So mitigating that in the future, some of it's in the drawdowns to flush. But Grand Coulee is a workhorse, and everybody knows it. They might not admit it, but to get the salmon down, the water comes from Coulee. To get the salmon back up, the water comes from Grand Coulee. And so that's the real trigger of all mitigation.
Yeah. Well, Warren, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for presenting today and sharing your efforts and your history with everyone. Thank you, everyone, for participating and listening in to the webinar. We will put this up on our YouTube site as soon as we can, but that will probably be a couple weeks. So check back later if you want to pass this on to somebody else. So thank you again, Warren.
So if you have the scientific type questions, if you send them to me, I'll get them to the right people, and I'll make sure that they respond to each of those questions.
All right, perfect. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.